Are we on? Hello, Culture Matters Podcast. This is amazing. I'm back again with great friends. Before I introduce them, God, I hope this is recording the right way. Here's a quote just for this podcast. What you leave behind is not what is engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others. Pericles, the orator, statesman, general. Our guest today, great friends of the Culture Matters Podcast, episode 525, Failing Forward, episode 70, Always Pass on What You Have Learned. The one and only Ginger Bell, Fobby Naghmi are here to talk about a book they curated, cultivated, aggregated, and inspired together 25 amazing leaders. Book called Leadership Matters. I challenge you all listening to this, go pick up the book. You know what? Stop listening to us right now. Just go pick up the book. And we're going to talk about this amazing book. I mean, so thanks for coming back on the show.
No, man.
And, I'm
Listen,
so
and
excited.
the other thing you need to know is that the name of the book was actually the germs of Culture Matters actually went into Leadership Matters. I mean, I think we should start from there, Ginger, how adamant I was about the title of the book. And Ginger could be my witness here.
Yep, he was. Yeah, he was. And it was one that came quite organically, but Jay, it was a huge influence from you and Culture Matters. And really what started all of this is that leadership does matter, and it matters a lot. And so yeah, Fobby, when we were playing back and forth with titles of the book, you held fast. And when Fobby holds fast to something, you don't argue with him because it comes from a place from within. And that's one of the things I love about you, Fobby.
Thank you. No, it was just something that I thought of the idea here on the show with Jay one time when we were recording something. And it was just to honor Culture Matters because it's such a powerful podcast to be on and to be a part of.
What do you guys think the synthesis or where they connect like the leadership piece and the culture piece? Because I'd like to make that, if we could try to unpack for our audience today, because where they connect or where they cross over and how they
yeah, I mean, I'll just jump in, Ginger. I mean, to me, it's leaders all basically make the culture of any place that they're part of, whether it's a football team, a company, a gas station. Doesn't make any difference. Whoever the leader is setting the culture for that organization or
100%.
that institution.
Yep.
100%. So it's a symbiotic relationship.
One leads to the other, and they all intersect. But culture begins with leadership, because without that leadership, you cannot create the culture. And so the beginning point is that leadership, and what that culture looks like then builds upon that.
What are some ways that our listeners starting today can completely undermine their leadership? Thou shalt.
Oh,
you wanted to destroy. You just want to destroy the company.
I tell you the best way to undermine leadership, right, is don't communicate. Don't communicate what you're thinking sincerely and just agree with the leader. Anything the leader says, say, yes, you're a genius. That's exactly what we should do.
Fobby, you're a genius. Ginger,
what do you think, Ginger? What would you do, Ginger?
Yeah. I'm writing these down.
Oh, gosh, where can leaders undermine? Where can you undermine leaders? I think saying yes to everything. I think the other way that you can undermine leaders is, and this happens, is by going behind their back and not being upfront. And I think, you see that a lot within organizations, which again ties into that culture. So, if you're a leader and you have an open policy to be open to conversations and to be challenged, I think that oftentimes, leaders think, hey, don't challenge me. But, you know, sometimes leaders need to be open to some of those challenges. And again, that goes back to the culture. And, you know, and there's so many, you know, great chapters in this book, Leadership Matters. But what are one of the things, and I can't think of which chapter it is, but it's the red pen culture.
Hmm.
Yeah, Keith Cantor.
Keith Cantor did the red pen culture, and he talks about you know, a changing point they had. They were doing a leadership meeting, and the organizer who was leading this discussion for them as a group, as an organization. And again, you know, as leaders, you have to be open to bringing someone else in to be able to facilitate some of those conversations. And, you know, I mean, you think about, Jay, what you do with Culture Matters, you're great at doing that, being that um, bystander and being open to that. So leaders need to be open to having a consultant come in and to set those up. But Keith talks about
Hmm.
when they did this in his organization, and one of the things was when you have, and it was symbolic, was just a red pen that just happened to be what was laying there at the time. Doesn't matter what it is, it can be anything, but for them it was the red pen. And so, you know, for their organization, they adopted this, it became part of their culture and who they are. Is when you're holding that red pen, you have complete ability to share your thoughts, to share your ideas without repercussion. And being a strong leader is, first of all, knowing when, and I say often, I think it's one of those things that as organizations, bringing a consultant in, like Jay, for you, what you do, to be able to look at that culture and look at the leadership and have those conversations. But for Keith, he shared, and you know, it's funny when Keith was writing, and I had several conversations with Keith when he was, you know, deciding what to write for his chapter. And in his first draft, and I know Keith won't mind me sharing this, but he had a lot of very standard leadership quotes, things from other people, you know, things like that. And I challenged him. I said, Keith, I said, I don't want to hear what other people think. I want to know what you think. I want to know what you're doing. And we completely rewrote his chapter, and it then involved all around this red pen culture and bringing that in and what that looks like. And so adopting something like that, where you have that within, especially within your leadership as an organization, to be able to have that ability to meet, to have those open conversations without repercussions, and then to move to action from there. So, you know, that's the point, is to be able to do that. I think all organizations should do that on an annual basis. When I was a corporate trainer with Dale Carnegie Training, we had a leadership course that we did. It was an 8-week course, but that was one of the things in helping leaders to facilitate these types of discussions, planning sessions, and then the next step. I think that leaders lose that sometimes. It's like, what is that next step? And they don't have to fulfill all of that, right? But what that looks like.
I think also, you know, Jay, you and I talked about this several months ago. I can't remember if we recorded it or we were just talking, right? Because the conversations get very blurry in my head with you. But we were talking about how culture really shines when someone else's has a different opinion.
Mm.
That's when you really show your true culture as a leader and as a company, right? So if and I said that half joking when you asked me how do you undermine a company or leadership, right? But honestly, if you're just agreeing with a leader all the time, that leader is never challenged on their culture, on what they're doing. Because the way I wrote my book, Falling Forward, you know, a couple of years ago, was I learned my greatest lessons when I failed. I wasn't learning anything when things were going great and we were closing 1 million loans a month or whatever, right? But when it all fell apart, that's when my culture really came up internally, what I was already born with. And I think every leader has to go through something like that, whether obviously you don't want to lose it all, but even in a day-to-day grind, like right now, and Ginger and I talked about this with Housing Wire guys, with that the 2.5 years we've been through the mortgage industry, true leadership has been showing up right now. Even deciding to merge with another company to save the company is a decision of leadership. You know, whereas other companies just bailed and shut down, someone decides, you know, it's better to save portion of the company so that at least some of them can survive. That's a noble act.
Yeah.
Mm.
And
And I
Gabe
think
talks
those,
about that in his chapter too.
yeah, yeah, Gabe Gillen did a fabulous chapter.
What does he talk about, Gabe?
Gabe basically talked about how he had to merge with Annie Mac, right? And how the decision was made. He knew he was going to lose some people, but it was for the greater good. And those are the kind of decisions that, and I think he called it the ripple effect, if I wasn't mistaken, Ginger.
Yep.
You know, some of the decisions that leaders make, the ripples that affects other people's families. You know, because all three of us are leaders, and so when we have people working for us, we just see that employee. But behind that employee is a spouse, a partner, children, family members, people counting on them, you know, a church that they give monthly donations to, whatever that is, there's somebody counting on that earning to come in on a monthly basis. And so taking leadership in a very, very serious and a very, like almost a grassroots level, you have to look at it from that view sometimes.
What was the inspiration behind having a group of people
Mm.
articulate their?
Ginger, what was that all about? What was that?
We had several conversations about the book. I don't think we ever doubted it was going to be a group. I mean, it was one of those, it needed to be a group because having the collective voice is leadership. Leadership isn't just one. And
Mm.
I think that was really the baseline about having this a collective book was that, you build on your leadership through those who you surround yourself with. And that includes other leaders. One of the things that was very important to us in putting this group of leaders together for this book was to have authors from different business types. So we have technology
Hmm.
companies in here, we have originators in here, we have owners in here. And so that was very important. We did not want it to be just one particular branch manager or business owner. We wanted to be able to see leadership from all areas, and it's not just in the mortgage industry. We have individuals from other industries as well, so bringing
Hmm.
that in. And so it was never a question of, hey, Fabio and I are going to write a book. It was just a matter of pulling everyone together.
I do think, Ginger, though, we were kind of, well, I think we said first it was gonna be like 12 or 15, then it got to be like 19, and then it was like, and finally I think I put my foot down at 23 or 25, so that's enough, Ginger. So this gotta
Yeah, and
stop.
then you sent me one more. Yeah, he's like, okay, we're done. And then he's like, oh, wait, we're not done. I have someone else. And that's kind of what happened. It's like, no, wait, there's someone else.
Because it could just go on. I mean, the thing is once you start opening the doors of inviting people, there are people that, I mean, you know, I don't know about you, Ginger, but I feel like after I was like the book was out and I was talking to other people, I was like, oh my God, why did I invite this person? Why did I, you know what I mean? What was I thinking, right? Like, there's some amazing people out there that
Oh yeah,
could have been included in the it could have been included in the book. It just we just didn't
100%.
think of them. Yeah.
Well, and we'll probably have another one, but Bobby, so we released the book at NAM National in Vegas a couple weeks ago. And NAM, Valerie Saunders, the past president of NAM, was great. She had a place for us. We had authors. We had a lot of the authors fly in. Barry Habib, who wrote our foreword, was there. And I had so many people come up to me. It's like, why didn't you invite me? Why didn't you invite me? And I'm like, hey man, it's like, yeah, because you reach a point, it's like you gotta just cut it off. But I think that's it. It's like, and people do want to share. People do want to share, and they want to be able to be a part. And it's kind of like we've almost started this discussion on leadership, Bobby,
Mm.
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
I'm so excited about because it's something that really needs to happen. Not just for us as a nation, a community, for our industry, for all of that. Leaders sometimes, and being an entrepreneur, business owner, sometimes you feel like you stand alone. And so
Mhm.
having this collective, and the first call we did with all of the authors,
Oh,
it was powerful. I mean, it was Bobby and I got off of there, and Bobby called me and he's like, man, he goes, I didn't think I would be so moved from having conversations with so many others.
I thought I would log on and be like 6 people and me and Ginger. That's what I really thought, Jay. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I give that my low self-esteem was kicking in. You know, the picture I sent you this morning with ego and fear, the two
Yep.
twin brothers, right? So my
Yep.
fear was kicking in, right? All that stuff. It just, and so you log on, also there's like 20 some odd people, and the Zoom screens are really small, and you're like, what the hell? Like, who's all these people?
Was there any point where those that contributed to the book uh, had mentioned, "Hey, I have somebody I'd want in this"?
I did have
Mm,
that. And
yeah, I
we,
think
and we,
Maybe we
we,
ran out of space, but
we ran out
that's
of, yeah, I mean, we
that's
ran.
something that you saw happen like naturally.
Yeah. And
Wow.
yes, we saw that. So we do have building a second set. So, we'll get something, but for where we're at right now, and I think where we're at with this book, first of all, it's important to know this book is for anyone, no matter who they are, whether they want to, grow in themselves. Mike Mills, he talked about being a leader of one. And Marshall Sparkman, he in his chapter talked about a major decision he made in his life, getting out of the military and getting into banking, and having that leadership conversation within your own mind,
Hmm.
because sometimes we forget, hey, it begins with you. You have to be a leader of you first, and then from there you can build on that. But whoever you are, whether you're in a leadership role, not in a leadership role, you are a leader. And if it's that leader of you, the leader of your family, it's like all of that. So this book is for anyone. What was interesting on a different conversation is we did have some people who we invited on who didn't want to be a part of the project and did not want to do a collective. And that to me was kind of aha in a sense, because as a leader, you can't have a scarcity mindset. And so there was some people we invited that say, I don't participate in collective, I don't do that. And it's like, gosh, that's your loss. And as a leader, you have to be open to working with others. You have to be able to learn, to give, to grow. And that's the thing that I love about this book, is that it truly is a collective of those who do want to give back, who do want to grow. And that is what being a leader is. Leader
and think
mindset
about
shouldn't come from scarcity.
and think about this, Ginger. I mean, it's not like, and it's gonna come off wrong when I say this, but I don't mean this in any. Like, it's not like we got a bunch of low-level leaders in this book.
No.
I mean, so it's not. That's the weird thing. I forget me and Ginger. Just everybody else in this book are very high-level people who thought of ideas, executed ideas for major mortgage companies, for major fintech companies, just amazing leaders. And so when Ginger and I were being told by a few people, we're like, that's odd.
Hmm.
Like, why would you not want to be a part of this collaboration? Like, this is like just magic about to happen. Like, I don't know if we knew that. At least I didn't suspect the success we're having from it, but I knew this was special.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
knew that after that Zoom call, like this was something totally different. But to have people say no to it was really really eye opening for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Hmm. Uh, what about threads of values? Are there any values, behavioral characteristics that stick out when you
Hmm.
look at the mosaic of different of the 25 people, like a mosaic
Yeah,
of
I
character
mean,
attributes, or
there
do
was
you think?
one major thing that stuck out to me was everybody in their own way talked about clear cut communication.
Hmm.
In their own way, they're all talking about,
All of them?
yeah, I mean, it's amazing the way that leaders are communicating and the way they want to be communicated with. They don't want the yes men. They want to be told when they're wrong. They want to have that, to coin Keith Cantor, that safe space. They
Mhm.
want to know, like with Brian Covey and being coachable, right? I mean, Alex K, are you doing your best? I mean, this guy's just out there, and he wants to have that communication. Like, are you doing your best? If you're not, let's find another role for you, or let's find where you belong with another company. So they're all communicating, and the desire to communicate was really, really like something that just really floored. Well, I don't say floored me, but for me, I saw that, and then I know that Ginger has missed a few, but I do get the benefit of sitting in on the podcast with the authors, and so you hear what's really going on behind the chapters. And once again, the desire, the common thread that I'm seeing over and over again is communication, 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 and I'm sure Ginger can add to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, I mean, the underlying thread that I saw was humbleness. And I know that came out in several of the podcast interviews that I was on too, is, being a servant leader, being a humble leader. And that's things, sometimes people think of leaders of being, super ego, you were talking about that, Fobby, and super confident. And I think the underlying similarity that I saw in so many of the chapters was that humbleness and humility, and that wanting to learn, wanting to grow, wanting to have an impact in a humble way.
Yeah, definitely the growth part, Ginger, to your point, you know what I mean? The continuous learning. The leaders were all talking about the desire to continue growing.
Hmm.
And for me, I think the thing that that at least that I want to do, right? Jay, I mean, just me and Ginger are both authors in here, right? And the thing that this book has really kind of solidified for me, right, is my desire to be a mentor.
Hmm.
And I think leadership to mentorship is the next step.
100%.
And I think most leaders would feel that way.
How do you define a mentor?
It's kind of a general question. What do you mean?
The distinction between the leader and the mentor.
Yeah, I think a leader is, and this is just my opinion, right? A leader is someone who's trying to accomplish a goal, right? And sometimes when you're in that goal, I know myself, I don't see things around me. I am just hyper focused on A to Z right now. Whereas a mentorship, I'm going to take the time and I'm going to coach somebody up to that next level. And Alex K makes this really impactful analogy to me one day. And he talked about how, a Super Bowl winning team goes up to their star quarterback and the coach says, "Hey, I want you to be my quarterback coach from now on." And nobody does that in the football league, you know what I mean? But we are constantly doing that in the mortgage industry. Like, you got your number one producer, and you're like, "Hey, I want you to be my vice president, or I want you to be my branch manager now," without ever coaching them how to be the branch manager,
Mhm.
without preparing them, that mentorship, that bridge. And I really believe that we need to start focusing on building those bridges so that when the future leaders can walk through them, they don't have to go through all the pains and tribulations that we did, because we were just thrown in. Like, one day I was a branch manager, the next day I was a regional vice president.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and that mentorship, and it's funny, Fabi, I just wrote an article for Housing Wire on building a leadership program within and how to do that. I mean, how many organizations have leadership programs and do that mentoring, do that coaching, do that, building, designing to how do you take someone from being the star quarterback to being in a leadership role. And that brings it back to culture again, right? So it's creating that culture of learning, of growing, of mentoring. And that's something as an industry, we do a very poor job, totally poor job of it. So I
And
think
Ginger, to your point, also, it also goes back to the abundance mindset,
that,
where we want to give because we're not worried. You know what I mean? So you're not worried about, oh, if this guy becomes a leader, he'll outshine me.
mhm,
More like, if he becomes a great leader, that's great because I have a slice of his DNA. You know what I mean? And that's cool that I got to participate in his success.
Yeah. There's another conversation. Let's talk about DNA because, is there a leadership DNA? And, if so, what does that look like? Is that something that can be learned, or is it something that is just innate, that is a part of who you are? And that goes back to your point of you're taking a star quarterback and you're putting him into a leadership role. Do they have that DNA? Do they have that ability to
Mhm.
learn that and to have that become a part of their DNA?
What do you
Yeah.
think?
I, I think it's individual.
Hmm.
I mean, look, after all these years, the great Michael Jordan has not decided to coach a basketball team. Why has Michael, you would think if anybody deserves to coach a basketball team and that could win as many championships, you would have Michael Jordan coaching somebody somewhere. He's bought a basketball team. He's got all sorts of investments in basketball, but he hasn't coached a basketball team. And so one of the debate, right? Is it Michael Jordan or is it LeBron James? Who cares? But Michael Jordan has not decided to coach. And we have to look at that and say, okay, he understands his limitations in life, or he understands that this may not be the right step for his legacy. Either or, take your pick. But
But
he's
is
made a
he
conscious decision.
self-aware
Yeah, yeah.
or is he a coward?
No, I wouldn't say a coward. I would never
No,
accuse. No,
but
no.
I mean that's part of it. But to your point,
Well,
though,
I don't know. I'm
Bobby, that's
philosophical.
it. Doesn't mean so it doesn't mean he doesn't have it in his DNA. He may. But as a leader, and this is where it comes back to, he is a leader. So beginning with that leader of one, he either one is not of an interest to him. So it doesn't, maybe it is in his DNA, but he's just made the decision that other people can do it better than him. Doesn't necessarily mean he can't do it. It just means that he chooses not to do it. But in terms of getting back to the question of DNA with leaders, and I'm going to go back to, my son is an Eagle Scout, and we were very involved with scouting through his years. And you could tell, and you're getting a group of boys who come into, Boy Scouts at the age of, 11. And you could tell even at that age which ones were the ones that had that drive, had that ability. Didn't mean they knew everything, but they did have that DNA in them to where you could just tell they were going to be a leader. So I think that there is a certain part of DNA, whether it's through your upbringing, whether it's through you, whether, whatever that is, and learned that's where the leadership comes from. And so it's within your culture, within your organization, looking for those leaders and then helping them, which is what we did in scouting. And so, coaching them to learn those skills, to build on those skills, to grow in those skills, and to learn from their mistakes. That's one of the things I loved about scouting is we let them make mistakes. As parents, sometimes that's hard because it's like, okay, this is not going to go well. But you give them that safety net to know, okay, what are your decisions? What are your choices? What are you going to make? And that goes again at Jay, it ties back to culture. Do you have the culture to allow your leaders with that, skill set, with that DNA to grow and to build on those skills?
But I want to go back to Michael Jordan real quick because he had a teammate named Steve Kerr.
Huh.
All right, who won championships with Michael Jordan on the Bulls, has been the coach for the Warriors, Golden State Warriors, and has won 4 or 5 championships with the Golden State Warriors as a coach. So I'm telling you, people know what they can accomplish and what they, you know what I mean? And like if someone said to me, Fob, would you want to be a loan officer again? Like every year, guys, I tell you the truth, every year around this time, I get this thing like I want to go originate loans next year. And I put my business plan together and I never execute it because I get busy with doing some leadership shit. Right? Can I say shit on you? I just said it.
Oh, from Bobby.
And it's
Leadership
like I can't
matters.
go and I cannot go back to originating loans. I mean, I keep thinking that I'm gonna do it every year, right? but for whatever reason, I just can't seem to execute those ideas.
Mm.
And so I have to learn to know my limitations.
Exactly.
And it's really important that as any leader, we need to know how far we can go. And if we can't go back, let's close a chapter on that and move forward.
What if at all is a component of leadership in seeing talent and opening opportunity for talent?
Hmm.
The question spurs from this DNA um, proposition that Ginger you were outlining.
Do you have a point? Bobby, are you ready to start? He's like taking a deep breath.
Yeah, I was thinking like this. It's a very interesting question because so as a leader inside the mortgage industry for me, right? So if I see somebody that reminds me of me,
Huh.
that's normally my first radar blip. Like, okay, they're doing a lot of things that I was doing in 94, 95. You know what I mean? I can see the hunger, I can see the passion, right? Um, I want to help them get to the next level.
Right.
Right. So that's an instinctual one that
Hmm.
I can feel. You feel it in your stomach, you feel it in your skin. The conversations lead to that conversation. So it's a very natural, organic procession, right? Then there's those events that happen during business planning season. And we're going through them right now. That's probably front and center where I'm talking to my managers. What does 2025 look like? And you can begin to hear people, their conversations, the words they're using about the vision. That lets you register, okay, this person is looking for a bigger picture than just a producing branch manager. They're seeing a wider range. It's incumbent upon me then to support them to get to that next wider range. So I think it's different things. Like it's not like we're scouts and we're walking around the country looking for the next great producing branch manager, right? I mean, that would be like a great. I would love that job, Ginger. If you could find someone that would pay me money for that, right? I would
We'll
do
create
that.
that job, Bobby. That's for you.
But I'm sure Ginger, from her education side, could probably chime in a lot better than that.
Yeah, I mean, it's you have to look within your organization. And I think in times like what we've been through for the last 2.5 years is when you find your up and coming leaders. And a lot of it begins with the vision, like you said, Bobby. So who has that vision? Who has that? It's that positivity. It's like getting through that. It's that ability to see oversee those obstacles. So I think within an organization, if you're looking at your organization for where are those next leaders, it is looking for those people who are not just stepping up in terms of activity or production or anything like that, but in terms of who is creating a positive impact within your organization in having discussions. If somebody has a bad day and getting them through that and lending that support, you know that's good leadership. So looking for those
Mhm.
individuals within your organization who have that empathy, that ability to not just sit and just do their job, but to see the bigger vision and to become a part of it themselves. And so I think that's important when you're looking at within your own organization for leaders. And then activities, obviously, if people are doing certain things, you know, people are so afraid right now. There's a lot of uncertainty, not just in our industry, but just in general. And so a true leader is one that moves forward in the face of adversity, in the face of uncertainty, and to grow within that. My son had an esports team. You know, Jay, you were in Eddie's
Yeah.
office, yeah, right? And the name of his esports team is Sanguine, and it is overcome adversity, and to be able to
Mm.
to step over and to do those things in spite of uncertainty. And that's how you find your leaders. And it doesn't
Mm.
have to be big moves. They don't have to be the one that's standing in the front of the room and taking charge. But that's the thing. And going back to that humble leader, And so many authors that we did have a part of this, they're like, you know, why me? It's like, you know, and being able to have those conversations, this is why you. That's what the mentoring and the leadership is. That's what that building is to be able to see those leaders and to build on that and to help them to grow in that confidence and to give them those skill sets. And it goes back to, and this is one of those things, you know, do you want to build leaders within your organization? You create that culture where they can learn, they can grow, and you give them the skills to do that. So if you're a leader, then what you need to do right now is you need to find out what that looks like and how do you build that within your organization. And it's probably outsourcing. It's probably,
Yeah.
you know, finding that to where, you know, you have someone that can come in that can help you to build that. And that's what I'm excited about, the conversations that we're having.
Yeah,
And
what's the reception been?
Let me just chime in real quick. One thing that I was told by Rick Skog at Pacific Union, I give a lot of credit, by the way, throughout my career. He was a great CEO to work for. So when we talk about DNA, you know, I know that Rick Scogg's DNA is forever in me. And he would say stuff like, if you want to be head of capital markets, start doing the work right now, even if you're just in the capital markets department. Like put together reports that's going to show me where we're losing money. Show me how my hedge is going to make more money. Don't wait for that moment. Start doing it today.
mhm.
And so the leaders that you really look that shine out, right, are the ones who are doing all that extra work and don't want to be compensated for it or credit, but they're just doing it because they enjoy it. The natural law is going to lift that person up no matter who they are, just because of the energy that they're putting out there.
Wow, what a great point to the hard landing that I thought I heard earlier of being promoted above one's current skill or promoted to one's limit of skill and the
Yeah, I
lower
mean,
the Peter principle. I'm promoted to my lowest level of competency. So you
yeah, but
that advice,
I think,
start doing what your
yeah.
future job is. Could that in theory, I'm just thinking out loud, in theory help you
I
smooth
remember
land?
when I had my own mortgage company, Jay, it was the funniest position, right? And you never think about it until you actually own a company and you see it. The receptionist position was the hardest position to keep consistent because either they were too smart to just answer the telephone back in the day, so you moved them into loan opening, you moved them into loan processing, loan, you know what I mean? They were just too smart, right? And you knew that they could be applied somewhere else in the company, or they weren't smart enough to even answer the phone, so you replaced them, right? But and I was scratching my head like I was like, why can't this role just be somebody who just wants to answer the phone and is really amazing at it? Why is it that they're always so good that they want to get promoted into that back room and become a processor? And so it's
So
just one of those things
is
you
it,
see that.
so I'm going to
Oh,
challenge
oh,
you
that's
on
a
that
really, yeah,
though.
that's good. Go, let's do it. Yeah.
But I'm going to challenge you on that, Fobby, because that goes to your hiring because you hired leaders. And so it wasn't, there are people who are amazing at answering phones. And, you know, I have people that, you know, work for me that do that. And they're fabulous. That's what they love that. That goes back to you, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, I would just, I don't know, Ginger, maybe you're right, and I'm not taking credit for it, but I'm just saying, I noticed that, and then
Yeah.
also, you know, because my chapter was based on music, Jay, so if you ever read my chapter, it was based on my lessons as a bass guitarist, right? And when you asked that question in the beginning of this little rabbit hole, I I instantly saw Paul Piper in my head. And Paul was this 16-year-old kid that came out to play with our jazz band. We're a bunch of early 20s, right? And so you see this fat, chubby white kid with his guitar, and he sits down, and I wasn't even looking at him. I was doing something, and he starts playing, and instantly it was like the oxygen went out of the rehearsal room, and all eyes were focused on this kid. He was just that damn good.
Oh,
He was just like, it just literally froze out. I mean, look, we're talking 30 some odd years later. I still know the exact place I was standing in that room when that happened. That's how good he was. And sometimes
wow.
that's what leadership is about. It's like you can't hold them down. They're just that damn good.
The current state of industry, what percentage of participants are all in, focused, engaged? What do you guys think intuitively?
Hmm.
Engaged,
Mm.
Engaged in
like
what?
engaged in the success of the mortgage company, or engaged in the industry, engaged in their lifestyle. I mean, what are we talking about?
Their business?
So
Yeah, because
this has
right,
been,
there's macro,
yeah,
uh,
yeah. So
there's
I just
the
there's been
tectonic
studies
plates
on this
are,
for there's been studies for this
are
forever. It's the
shifting.
same, pretty much the same percentages every year, right? You have about 7%, 7 to 8%, let's say 7% right now, that are 100% engaged, right? Then you have about another 10 to 15% that are out the door, right? So we got about 22% covered now, right, Jay? So that leaves 78% in the middle who are absolutely numb to anything that's happening around them, no matter if the rates are 2.5% or if the rates are 8%. And that variable of percentages has not moved since I've been following that number for the last, I don't know, 8, 10 years. And so the goal of all leaders, right, believe it or not, is we look at that 78% and say, can I please get 5% of these people and get them into that 7% column? Because if I can get them doing one extra loan per month, my ROI goes up exponentially.
I don't know what percentage of CEOs, that 7%. Of that 7%, I wonder what percentage of those are the CEOs.
Well, we're talking about employees beneath leadership. So we're talking about
Oh,
loan officers, loan processors, underwriters. You know, at any point, I know 15% of my team is just, they're just there for that paycheck. I got it. I'm okay with it.
well, to Ginger's point earlier in the conversation, which I deeply agree with, the that whoever that chief is will influence the people below their awareness.
Yeah. I mean, we all see pictures
So,
on
so
LinkedIn, right? Where they have like a bowling night, or they're all dressed up in the Halloween costumes. That's all to create that team atmosphere, like to build that, to your point, that culture, right? Comes from leadership. Like,
Yeah.
let's get everybody together and create something more than just work. But how
Well,
many
I
leaders
think,
are really doing that?
and I think, I mean, to your point is how many are engaged? So I think that the question is
yeah,
engaged in
like engaged,
what?
define would be like
Yeah.
engaged
So
means
the
I could be
engaged,
doing something else, but I actually choose not to because my responsibility, my obligation is to the organization. If it's the role of the chief, for example,
right,
I'm obligated to the shareholders, so I'm accountable to them. I'm accountable to the results, or I'm fired by the board.
right.
Mm.
So engaged would be defined by the degree by which they are sacrificing what they want for what they have to do for the village to not get burned down by the Vikings who are coming on the shores, with the with the oars, those scary Viking movies, that would
I
be
love
how I
those.
look
I
at
love those.
engaged. Like we're all doing this on the weekend. We're honoring each other at a high level, and because we could be with our families right now, but we're doing this, we're honoring each other with that respect, and the audience is benefiting from that sacrifice. And we're investing into our audience, and that force, of course, to not disrespect our interpersonal relationships in our lives, we've got to communicate like the leaders in Leadership Matters talk about, and somehow make up for that in various ways. So that's what I mean by engaged. Because the reason I asked that was because you mentioned a couple times, Ginger, and in the other podcast about how the industry has been through a lot. It's like those plates are shifting, and it's like an earthquake. Am I standing up? So am I full on the ground? Can I get back up? Anyway, so there's a question there somewhere, I think.
Well, I think to your point of engaged. So as a leader of an organization, And I don't know percentages as far as our industry. I couldn't even begin to tell you. But I think in terms of as a leader of an organization, to be engaged, you need to be able to be actively looking at every aspect of your business. Sales is one part of it. Obviously, the sales is what drives it, but the sales is not everything because you can have a very successful, high sales, highly productive business,
Yeah.
but not have a successful business because you could have a lot of turnover. You could
Hmm.
have a lot of unhappy people. You could have, I mean, there's a lot of things. So,
Great.
being that leader is being engaged in all aspects of your business. And that means, do you have a bowling night? I just last week spoke in Wisconsin for an organization, and they had a big leadership summit,
Hmm.
and they had certain requirements in order to be able to be invited to this within those in their organization. And so, they spent a lot of time. I had several calls with them, creating the content I was doing. They were in very involved. They were in very engaged, not just of, hey, we're going to have this, we're going to get everybody together, it's going to be a big party. What they had within that 2-day event was very important. They were very engaged. And to the point that, I had conversations all the way to the top in just my content, just my 1 hour. I was their closing speaker and what I was doing. And they had all those activities. So they played whirly ball and they did all those other things too, which were so important. But being engaged in your business is looking at all aspects of your business. The sales, is obviously a component of it, but it's important in having that entire culture. And as a leader, you have to be engaged in creating that and creating it on a continuum to where it's just not. And the organizations that do that right now and build on that are the ones that are going to continue to grow and to prosper going into 2025.
Hmm. There was I can't remember his name, unfortunately, but it's I still do this to this day, Jay. This leader that I work for, he put up $100 bill on the wall on the bulletin board, whatever that was, right? And he said this. He goes, "This $100 will be given to the guy who asked the dumbest question."
Huh.
You know what I'm saying?
Socrates.
That's an engaging leader right there because he's giving you permission for the minute. Like if I get that dumb question, I'm gonna win that $100. So I'm gonna ask a really stupid question, and it really opened my eyes that my questions have value to them.
That's a beautiful point because I would argue that a disengaged leader on the spectrum of engagement, because that's the spectrum. What would lead me to be confident to be vulnerable in that ask
Mm,
if my conscience knew I wasn't doing my job? Like our body knows when we're not doing what we need to do, even if we don't realize it. So, I think if I'm an insecure leader, what does that actually mean? I
Yeah,
I lack
I think if you're
security.
insecure, yeah,
I
mm.
lack security. So what have I been saying no or yes to or yes or no and confusing the two? This is, oh my
but I
God.
think
I am so
but
excited for this
I
conversation.
think he made a safe zone for asking questions and
Exactly.
bringing your
Yes.
opinion to the table.
Yeah. Which is smart
And
because so many people are afraid of approaching the leader. And that goes to,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's, sometimes, and so many leaders are not approachable. And I did an event one time years ago for a wholesale organization, for all of their account executives. And so the event that we did, it was a 2-day event for all their AEs. And I had QR codes. So we had a leaderboard. We had, they would go and scan QR codes with their phone, and every badge had a QR code on it. So they could scan it and then they would be connected with that account executive because, most people you go to, and it's any organization. I mean, this is even, within your organization, Bobby, people stick within their own little group, right? And
mhm,
so as a
mhm.
leader, you need to get people out to expand. And so we did this with the QR code. It forced people to go talk to other
Wow.
people, scan the QR code. We put it onto a leaderboard. And the president, who by no fault of his own, is seen as unapproachable. And it's not, he is totally approachable. He's a great guy. It's just that fear that some people have of approaching that leader. And because we had the QR codes on there, everybody was going up to him and talking to him and having a conversation and scanning his QR code. And after the session, he came up to me and he says, "Man, Ginger," he goes, "I have never had so many AEs come up and talk to me. Thank you so much. That was awesome." Now, I didn't tell him the reason they were is because they thought his QR code was worth more points than anybody else's. But sometimes we have to put that $100 bill up there, right? And bridge that gap and be able to have that to where it does open. And as leaders, it is being vulnerable and saying, "Hey, $100 bill for the most, the dumbest question," or, doing QR codes and saying, "Hey, approach me, come and talk to me. I'm going to force you to do that. I'm putting a QR code. It may be worth the most." But as leaders, you have to look for ways to open those conversations within your organization, and sometimes you have to find that bridge to be able to do that. And that is a good leader. That right now, as organizations, is what people should do. And I see this as, like, I speak at a lot of company events, and I can always tell the good presidents, the good CEOs, the good leaders are the ones that get in the middle, that don't stand off, that don't just watch things, but they get themselves in the
Ginger
middle.
had me dance last year at our summit in
I
front of
made
my
him dance. He did.
in front of all my branch managers. She made me dance, Jay. And you know how bad of a dancer I am. You and I have
He is
done
a
this
bad
on Zoom. Okay,
I no
very
comment.
vulnerable,
Nothing more
very
to add.
vulnerable. Dancing matters, Jay. That's my next book.
I never thought of this before in this way, but I want your guys' opinion on the engagement, right? So yeah, we're all either in a relationship or will be. Like, let's say I'm thinking about the engagement, like I'm gonna propose. Before that, there was an infinite array of choice. And then I had this concept that I'm gonna propose, which implies a covenant, implies like a no to all other possibilities. In that proposal is a question. So I'm forced to be vulnerable. I'm asking,
Mm-hmm.
like you said with that $100, will you marry me?
Mm-hmm.
If my counterpart says yes, they're giving me their word. I'm implying mine with the ask, like, as in, I'm engaging. It's an engagement. I'm not starting, another, it's our people are like, I'm not, this is my company. I'm engaged in the fruit,
Mm-hmm.
right? Our profit, our upward mobility, our career advancement, all that's implied in a job. Like, I want to work for this company, with this company, grow with this company. So I'm just trying to engage. So I mean,
You know,
I'm asking, will you marry me? The answer is yes. Now we have a period of time for my counterpart to vet my actions are in alignment with my ask or the implied commitment, which would be everything before this ritual, this wedding, where the whole culture is going to get together, and both of us are going to say, I do. We're going to agree before this, so the
you hope, you
engagement.
hope, you hope, you hope
Well,
that they
hey,
say I do,
this is
and then
this
the
is a
engagement doesn't.
metaphor. This is like a metaphor, guys. I just like when I think of
I mean,
engagement.
the thing that I was writing a note here, Jay, was that Jay is assuming it's a one-way street. He's engaged. He's not thinking that the partner's
Well, that's a
engaged.
deep cultural conversation.
And
Yeah,
yeah, see,
yeah.
the actual thing is you propose the engagement, and now we're engaged. And you said now I'm engaged. You're both engaged. Engagement is a two-way street. The leader, the person asking the question, and then the person responding are now both engaged in this commitment.
Oh,
and in a
yes, I agree. Yeah.
relationship,
Yes.
right? So engagement is a two-way street. It's not a one-way street. And so a lot of leaders think, well, my employees aren't engaged. They just leave at 5 o'clock. Well, what are you doing to engage them? Are you asking them to marry you? Are you like, what are you asking
Yes,
them?
that's where I'm like, that's why I very, you know, the role that the heart of the organization, the heartbeat, is how the chief relates to other human beings in congruence with, or or else I don't believe Ginger would have worked with you to get 25 human beings together that represented, you know, if we're representing one attribute, it means we're not representing its inverse or the opposite. So there's
But
this
think about this
collective group
also,
of
guys.
people.
This is something really interesting I just thought of. Is the CEO is trusting his executive leadership, level people, who are then trusting their executive leadership, trusting their sales leadership, and it keeps trickling down to multiple leaders. And so, how many layers between the CEO and say a branch manager in the mortgage industry, if we say the mortgage industry construct, right? And so a lot of times you hear that we are a flat organization. There's not a lot of layers of management between the ownership and the branch manager. It's not always so good, right? Sometimes
Yeah,
you need that buffer.
flat earther.
Right. So it's interesting to me when you talk about engagement, how is the CEO engaged with just the C-level guys? Or is the CEO engaged with the sales leadership? Is the CEO engaged with the processing
Well,
leader?
that's to Ginger's point about transcending the hierarchy, or something
Yeah.
as subtle as a dance, or in if the inherent dynamic is, I don't want to go up to, why should I'm the janitor of the organization. At the same time, I am a human being and we're equal under
Hmm.
the idea that, we're human, right? But what's the likelihood that what's fair in me having to go up to the owner?
Well, I want to
There's
ask
not.
Ginger a question. I want to ask Ginger a question. Ginger, I was thinking to myself when you were talking about that Wisconsin or the wholesale, right, and the president, how many people, including myself, by the way, are fearful of the title and not the person?
And that, yeah, I think that is a lot of it. And sometimes the two go hand in hand. And so,
Absolutely.
it is
Absolutely.
definitely that. And sometimes as leaders, we don't realize that people can be intimidated, can be, at that point. And I get this sometimes, even in my discussions with my husband, and he says something about, well, they're intimidated by you. I'm like, how can you be intimidated by me? It's like I'm probably one of the least unintimidating people. It's like I will talk to you, have a conversation with you, but it is that perception, sometimes in the role, sometimes in something else. So how do you overcome that? And that's back to you have to create that ability to let them have those discussions, let them have those, and it may be in their mind, it's not in your mind, but I think having times where maybe as a leader you do have one-on-ones with everyone in the organization, not just your C level, but be able to have that. We used to do fireside chats. And so with the CEO, we would do quarterly, fireside chats. And he always, it's funny because he always wanted to pre-record it because he hated having something not perfect. And I said, but that's the whole value of this is that organic and having those discussions. So I think it's, as a leader, you have to get over that perception of perfection and you have to be vulnerable to your point of asking that engagement question
Mm.
of what if they say no? And it's like, well, maybe they will say no. And so then that opens a dialogue. Why are they saying no? Is there something else that's going to happen? And so, it's getting past that black and white and realizing that as a leader, you have to look at everything. When we started going through so many changes that we did in our industry, I told my team, I said, all hands on deck. Whatever we need to do, our customers, our clients, we are for them. And my team knew that. My clients knew that. It was all hands on deck. And so sometimes that means doing things that you wouldn't normally do, and that's okay. But, having that engagement is definitely a two-way street. And so, you have to set those up within your organization to be able to have those conversations and to create that culture. And again, it goes back to culture.
Guys, I would love to do a part two anytime you're willing. This is an amazing conversation. I can't wait for this the next book and the next one and the next one. One thing I want to challenge the audience is to listen to episode 70 on the Culture Matters podcast, Ginger Bell, and episode 525 of Fobby Naghmi for more of these two amazing people to our show. And I challenge you all listening, buy, invest in your future self by investing in Leadership Matters, because regardless of authority, influence, and your own confidence listening to this, you're in a position of leading human beings with your example. So get the book. It's applicable to everybody and anybody. And what where can people get the book fastest, guys? I want to make sure they take action on this.
So you can go to our website, which is called leadershipmatters.us, and you can buy it there. It's through Amazon, or you can go onto Amazon and just look for Leadership Matters and buy it there. I will, on a side note, let you know that all proceeds of sales of the book is going to an organization called A Need We Feed. And that's an organization that Fobby is spearheading a Potapalooza in December. So if you're listening to this, tune in for that. It's December 15th. And so that was something else that was important to us, is to not just have this book give back in terms of learning, but give back in terms of the proceeds that we make on it to be able to help others. And so we're really excited about that.
In the spirit of collaboration, being that Fobby is the host, Fobby, can you please stop recording?
Can I do my moniker takeout or something?
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah, I mean, this is just like
But
a
I
book.
don't, I don't, but I don't have music. Real quick, I do want to say one thing. If you do buy the book on Amazon, please give us reviews. Please give us reviews. Right,
Yes.
Ginger? We want reviews, right? We want good, bad, and ugly reviews. We want them all. We want to know where we failed, and so we can improve it. So, all right. Well, Jay, Ginger, thank you for being on the show with me today.
Hey, thank you
I love
guys.
sitting in for this stuff, and this is your host on Culture Matters, Fobby Naghmi, signing out.